I pretended to stay unconscious in the hospital so I could hear what my family really thought about me. It all began 3 days after I was in a serious motorcycle accident. They say there are moments that split your life into before and after. For me, that moment wasn't the motorcycle crash that nearly killed me. It was the quiet conversation my family had after, while I lay there, supposedly unconscious, and listened to them plan my death. My own flesh and blood, hoping I wouldn't wake up, discussing how much my life insurance payout would be worth. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Cracked ribs, a concussion, a broken leg, a mess, really, but I was healing faster than anyone expected. By day 3, my mind was sharp, though my body felt like a lead weight. When I heard footsteps approaching, I instinctually kept my eyes closed, pretending to still be out cold. My older brother, Camden, entered first. "Still out cold," he said, his voice flat, to someone behind him. And then I heard her. My mother's voice. "Good," she said, almost a sigh of relief. "Maybe this will finally teach her a lesson." My heart stopped. A lesson? What lesson? "I mean, riding that death trap at 25, Mom continued, her tone dripping with disdain. "She's always been reckless. Remember when she dropped out of law school to become a paramedic?" Camden corrected her, but not out of loyalty. Which, let's be honest, was probably smart. She never had the brains for law anyway. I lay there, perfectly still, as my family dissected my life choices like I was already in the grave. The worst part? The money, Mom sighed. "Do you know how much this hospital stay is costing? And she has that bare-bones insurance from her ambulance job." Then Camden's voice dropped, hushed, almost conspiratorial. "We could always just," Mom hissed, cutting him off. "Don't even say it." "I'm just saying," he continued, "if she doesn't wake up, the life insurance would." Mom's voice was sharp. "Someone might hear you." My blood turned to ice. They were discussing my life insurance, while I was lying right there. "Look, all I'm saying is maybe this is a sign," Camden pressed on. "She's never fit in with this family anyway. Always playing hero. Always making us look bad with her blue-collar job." Mom's voice, dripping with disgust, chimed in. "Remember when she brought that homeless man to Christmas dinner? Or when she testified against Uncle Richard at his trial?" Camden added. "Uncle Richard. The family secret we weren't supposed to talk about. The reason I'd cut contact with most of my relatives 2 years ago. She destroyed this family," Mom said quietly. "Richard's in prison because of her lies." Lies. They were calling my testimony about what he did to me lies. The room fell silent. I heard the rustle of clothing, like someone was leaning closer to my bed. "You know what I think?" Camden whispered, barely audible. "I think we need to have a serious conversation with her doctor about her prognosis." A chill snaked down my spine. "What kind of conversation?" Mom's voice was barely a breath. "The kind where we discuss quality of life. Brain injuries can be unpredictable. Sometimes it's more merciful to let someone go." My brother, suggesting they pull the plug. "Camden," Mom warned, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. "Think about it, Mom," he insisted. "She's never going to change. She'll wake up and go right back to embarrassing us. Back to her pathetic job, her bleeding heart causes, her vindictive crusade against our family. She cost us everything," Mom said, her voice growing stronger now. "The country club membership, the charity board positions. Do you know how humiliating it was when the Weatherbys asked me to step down?" Because of her lies about Richard, Camden agreed. One troubled girl's fantasy destroyed a good man's reputation. Fantasy. 15 years of abuse was a fantasy to them. "If she doesn't wake up," Camden continued slowly, "the insurance money would solve a lot of problems. We could pay off the house. Maybe take that European trip you've been wanting." My mom's eyes, I imagined, must have gleamed. "How much is the policy worth?" she asked. 200,000, he replied. "Plus, there might be a settlement from the motorcycle company. Faulty brakes, remember." My stomach churned. The brakes weren't faulty. I'd hit black ice. "We'd have to be careful," Mom said, now fully on board. "Make sure everything looks natural." "Of course," Camden said, his voice a grotesque parody of grief. Grief-stricken family making the difficult decision to let their daughter go peacefully. "When should we talk to the doctor?" "Soon. Before she shows more signs of improvement." I heard footsteps moving closer to my bed again. "Look at her," Camden said, his voice cold, devoid of any warmth. 25 years old, and this is what she has to show for it. No husband, no real career, no money. She's a disappointment. I had such hopes for her," Mom sighed. "Law school, a proper marriage, grandchildren. Instead, she chose to throw it all away." "For what?" To save strangers who probably don't even appreciate it. She always was selfish, Mom agreed. Even as a child, always causing drama, always seeking attention. Attention. That's what they called my cries for help when Uncle Richard was hurting me. The funeral would actually help our image, Camden mused. Tragic young woman taken too soon. People love a martyred hero story. We could set up a scholarship. Mom added, warming to the idea, her voice almost gleeful. Show how much we supported her career choice. Perfect. Turn her into a symbol while finally being free of the real thing. Their footsteps moved toward the door. I should go talk to that doctor, Mom said. What's his name? Martinez. Good idea. And I'll call the insurance company just to understand the process. Remember, if anyone asks, we were here praying for her recovery. Camden finished. I know. The door clicked shut. I lay in the darkness, processing what I'd just heard. My family wasn't just disappointed in me. They were actively hoping I'd die, and they were planning to profit from it. I forced myself to breathe normally, to keep my heart rate steady. The monitors beside me beeped rhythmically, a chilling soundtrack to my awakening. What kind of people was I related to? That night, my mind replayed every conversation from my childhood, every family gathering, every moment I thought showed love. How many of those smiles had been fake? How many expressions of pride had been performances for outsiders? I remembered the night I'd finally told my parents about Uncle Richard. I was 22, home from college for Christmas break. I'd spent 4 years in therapy, building the courage to speak. When I finally said the words, told them what he'd done to me from age 7 to 18, their first response wasn't concern for me. It was concern for the family reputation. Are you sure you remember this correctly? Mom had asked. You were so young. Children sometimes misinterpret adult affection. Dad had added. They'd spent that entire conversation trying to convince me I was wrong, that Uncle Richard was a good man who'd been nothing but kind to me. When I insisted, when I showed them the journal I'd kept documenting every incident, they'd accused me of having an overactive imagination. You always were dramatic, Mom had said, making up stories to get attention. But I hadn't made it up. And 2 years later, when Uncle Richard was caught abusing my cousin, Isla, they couldn't deny it anymore. The physical evidence was undeniable. The medical reports were conclusive. Yet somehow, even then, I remained the villain in their story. The next morning brought more visitors. My cousin Bridget arrived with her husband, Trevor. Both dressed in expensive clothes that screamed success and superiority. Any change? Bridget asked, settling into the chair beside my bed like she was attending a social event. None, Mom replied, her voice heavy with manufactured grief. The doctors say it could go either way. Such a tragedy, Trevor said, though his tone suggested he was discussing the weather. She was so young. Has anyone been to her apartment? Bridget asked, and I could hear the calculation in her voice. I mean, someone should check on her things. Make sure nothing gets stolen. My apartment, the one-bedroom place I'd worked 3 jobs to afford, decorated with second-hand furniture and artwork from local artists I befriended. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Camden has her keys, Mom said. He's handling all that. Good thinking, Trevor said. Does she have any valuables? Electronics, jewelry, savings accounts. The audacity was breathtaking. They were cataloging my possessions while I lay supposedly unconscious 3 feet away. Not much. Camden's voice joined the conversation as he entered the room. Her bike was the most expensive thing she owned, and that's totaled. What about her savings? Bridget pressed. Investment accounts? Retirement funds? She spent everything on that ridiculous motorcycle, Mom said with disgust. And giving money away to every sob story that crossed her path. They were talking about my donations to the women's shelter, the homeless veteran I'd helped get back on his feet, the immigrant family whose medical bills I'd paid when their son was hit by a drunk driver. Remember when she paid for that stranger's cancer treatment? Bridget laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Thousands of dollars to someone she'd met exactly once. Or when she gave her entire Christmas bonus to that animal rescue, Camden added, shaking his head as if my generosity was a mental illness. At least she had good life insurance, Trevor said, steering the conversation back to finances. That shows some planning ahead. The EMT union required it, Camden explained, though I doubt she understood what it meant for her beneficiaries. Who are the beneficiaries? Bridget asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Mom and I are listed as co-beneficiaries, Camden said. She set it up when she started the job, back when she still considered us family. Before I'd testified against Uncle Richard. Before I'd learned that truth was less important to them than reputation. That's fortunate, Trevor said. The word hit me like a physical blow. At least something good can come from this tragedy. Fortunate. My potential death was fortunate to them. They stayed for another hour, their conversation drifting between fake concern for my condition and very real interest in my financial situation. They discussed funeral arrangements, memorial services, and how to present my life story in the most flattering light possible for them. Not once did anyone mention missing me. No one shared a fond memory. No one expressed hope for my recovery. They talked about me like I was already dead, like I was a problem finally being solved. When they finally left, I heard Mom whisper to Camden in the hallway, "Have you talked to Dr. Martinez yet?" "This afternoon," he replied. "I'm going to ask about her realistic prognosis and our options." Our options, not my options. Theirs. That afternoon, Dr. Martinez entered with Camden, and I immediately sensed the tension between them. I'd liked Dr. Martinez during my conscious interactions. He seemed genuine, competent, and caring. I hoped he wouldn't be swayed by whatever manipulation Camden was planning. "Doctor, I need to ask some difficult questions," Camden began, his voice heavy with fake emotion that made my skin crawl. "Of course, what can I help you with?" My sister's always been troubled. Mental health issues, risky behavior, poor decision-making. Is it possible that even if she wakes up, she might not be the same person? I felt sick. Camden was laying groundwork to question my mental competency, setting up a narrative that would justify whatever they were planning. "Brain injuries can certainly affect personality and cognitive function," Dr. Martinez said carefully. "But your sister's scans look very promising. I expect a full recovery. But you can't be certain?" Camden pressed. "Medicine isn't about certainties, Mr. Thornfield. It's about probabilities. And the probability is that your sister will make a complete recovery. What if we're not comfortable with those odds?" Camden asked, and the casual way he said it made my blood run cold. There was a long pause. I could almost hear Dr. Martinez processing the implications of the question. "I am not sure I understand what you're asking," he said slowly. "I'm asking about our options as her family. If we feel that the quality of life she might have isn't acceptable." Another pause. This one felt dangerous. "Mr. Thornfield, are you asking about withdrawing life support?" "I'm asking about all our options. Your sister isn't on life support. She's breathing on her own. Her vitals are stable and her brain function is normal. There's nothing to withdraw. But if her condition deteriorated, there's no indication that it will. In fact, I expect her to regain consciousness within the next day or two." I could feel Camden's frustration radiating across the room like heat. "Doctor, you don't understand. My sister has a history of making poor choices, reckless behavior. She caused significant trauma to our family with false accusations against a relative. If she wakes up, she might continue down that destructive path." False accusations. 15 years of documented abuse were false accusations. "Mr. Thornfield," Dr. Martinez stated, his voice firm. "My job is to treat medical conditions, not to make judgments about patients' life choices. Your sister is recovering well from her injuries. That's all that matters to me. Even if she's a danger to herself and others? Has she been declared mentally incompetent by a court? No. But then she has the same rights as any adult patient. I'm going to check on her now. I'll ask you to step outside." Camden's footsteps retreated reluctantly, and I could hear his anger in the heavy way his shoes hit the floor. Dr. Martinez approached my bed, and I felt safer with him there. "Your vitals are excellent," he said, making notes on his chart. "Heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity. Everything looks normal for someone in your condition." He leaned closer and lowered his voice to barely above a whisper. "I know you can hear me. Your brother's questions were inappropriate, and I want you to know that no one will make medical decisions for you without your consent. When you're ready to wake up, just open your eyes." My heart rate spiked on the monitor, betraying my consciousness. "That's what I thought," he said quietly. "Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready." He left, and I lay there, processing what had just happened. Dr. Martinez knew I was conscious. He was protecting me. But for how long? And what would Camden do when he realized his plan wasn't working? That evening brought a parade of family members I hadn't seen since Uncle Richard's trial. They'd all cut contact with me after the conviction, choosing to side with an abuser rather than admit they'd failed to protect a child. My Aunt Dolores arrived first, her designer purse clutched like a weapon, her face arranged in an expression of theatrical grief. Such a tragedy, she sighed dramatically, taking the chair closest to my bed. She had so much potential. Wasted potential. Uncle Paul corrected as he joined her. "But maybe this is God's way of giving her peace." "Peace from what?" Mom asked. Though I suspected she already knew the answer. From her demons, from the lies she told, from the guilt of destroying our family. They thought I felt guilty. They thought I was tormented by telling the truth about Uncle Richard. Richard always said she'd been troubled since childhood, Dolores continued, her voice gaining strength as she warmed to her narrative. Making up stories, seeking attention. He tried to help her, spent so much time with her, trying to be a positive influence. Positive influence. That's what they called grooming. The trial nearly killed him, Paul added, his voice heavy with manufactured sorrow. An innocent man destroyed by a disturbed girl's fantasies. He's doing better now, though, Dolores said, brightening slightly. Prison has given him time to reflect, to forgive her for what she did to him. Forgive me for what he did to me. He writes to us sometimes, Paul said. Never bitter, never angry, just sad that she couldn't accept his love and guidance. His love. 15 years of abuse was love to them. Maybe if she doesn't wake up, it's for the best, Paul mused, his voice taking on a philosophical tone. She can't cause any more damage and Richard could finally have peace. Dolores agreed. Poor man has suffered enough. They stayed for 2 hours, taking turns sharing their revisionist history of my relationship with Uncle Richard. In their version, he was a misunderstood saint who tried to help a troubled child. I was a vindictive liar who destroyed an innocent man out of spite. The most disturbing part was how convinced they seemed of their own story. It wasn't deliberate deception. They'd genuinely rewritten history in their minds to avoid confronting their own failure to protect me. When they finally left, I heard Paul tell Camden in the hallway, if you need character witnesses about her mental state, we're happy to help. Character witnesses. They were building a case against my competency. The next day brought my father. I hadn't seen him since the trial, where he'd sat in the back row with his arms crossed, stone-faced throughout my testimony. When the guilty verdict was read, he'd walked out without acknowledging me. Now he sat beside my bed. And for a moment, just a moment, I hoped he might be different from the others. Maybe time had given him perspective. Maybe he'd realized what Uncle Richard had really done to me. I don't know if you can hear me, he said quietly, his voice rough with what sounded like genuine emotion. But I need to say something. My heart monitor betrayed my attention, beeping slightly faster. Your mother thinks I should let you go. Camden thinks it would be mercy. Maybe they're right. The hope died in my chest like a snuffed candle. You broke this family apart, he continued, his voice gaining strength. My brother is in prison because of you. My wife can't show her face at church. My son has to explain to his colleagues why his sister destroyed our reputation. But I know why you did it. You were always jealous of Richard. He was successful, respected, accomplished, everything you weren't. So you decided to bring him down. Jealous of my abuser. The man who'd stolen my childhood was someone I was supposedly envious of. The worst part is that people believed you. A court believed you, but I know my brother. He's a good man who made one mistake. A mistake. Not mistakes. Not a pattern of abuse spanning over a decade. One mistake. He trusted you, Dad continued. Tried to be a father figure when you needed guidance. And you repaid his kindness by destroying his life. Father figure. The irony was suffocating. If you wake up, nothing changes. You'll still be the same vindictive, attention-seeking girl who destroyed our family for your 5 minutes of fame in court. 5 minutes of fame. For days of testimony, about 15 years of abuse was fame-seeking to him. Maybe it's better if you don't wake up, he said, standing to leave. Maybe everyone would be happier. He paused at the door, then returned to my bedside. I've already signed the papers Camden prepared. If your condition deteriorates, we won't keep you alive artificially. It's what's best for everyone. Papers. They prepared legal documents to ensure my death. I should hate you for what you did to Richard, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. But you're still my daughter, so I'll just hope you find peace. After he left, I lay there trying to process the depth of their betrayal. My own father, the man who was supposed to protect me, had chosen my abuser over me. Not only did he refuse to believe what Uncle Richard had done, he was actively facilitating my death. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was completely alone. Every person who was supposed to love me unconditionally had conditions, and I'd failed to meet them by refusing to be silent about my abuse. That night, a new voice entered my room. A female professional with the crisp confidence of someone accustomed to handling delicate situations. Mrs. Thornfield, I'm attorney Patricia Walsh. You called about your daughter's situation. An attorney. They'd hired legal counsel to help them kill me. Yes, Mom replied, settling into the visitor's chair. We need to understand our options regarding our daughter's care. I've reviewed the medical records you provided. Your daughter's condition is stable, correct? for now, but brain injuries are unpredictable. The doctors say there could be complications. That was a lie. Dr. Martinez had said I was recovering well. And you mentioned concerns about her mental competency. She's made increasingly erratic decisions over the past few years, Mom said, warming to her narrative. Dropped out of law school to take a low-paying job, alienated the entire family with false accusations against her uncle. False accusations. She claimed he abused her as a child. The court believed her lies. And now an innocent man is in prison. I see. And you're concerned that if she recovers, she might continue making poor decisions. We're concerned she might be a danger to herself and others. She's always been impulsive, reckless. This motorcycle accident is just the latest example. Well, if she regains consciousness, you could petition for guardianship based on mental incompetency. With the right documentation, you could make her medical and financial decisions. What kind of documentation would we need? Psychiatric evaluations, testimony from family members about her erratic behavior, evidence of poor judgment. The more comprehensive the case, the better your chances. And if she doesn't regain consciousness, then the medical power of attorney you've established would allow you to make end of life decisions on her behalf. Medical power of attorney. They'd given themselves the legal right to kill me while I was unconscious and couldn't contest it. How quickly could we move forward? Camden's voice joined the conversation as he entered the room. If she wakes up, we could file a petition within days. The court would order an evaluation, and if she's found incompetent, you'd be appointed as her guardians. And if she doesn't wake up? That's a decision for you and her doctors. Some families choose to maintain life support indefinitely. Others feel it's more humane to allow natural death. They spent another hour discussing legal strategies, financial implications, and how to present their case for my incompetency. Attorney Walsh explained how to document my erratic behavior, which family members would make the best witnesses, and what kind of psychiatric evaluation would support their claims. When they finished, I understood the full scope of their plan. If I woke up, they'd have me declared incompetent and control every aspect of my life. If I didn't wake up, they'd let me die and collect the insurance money. Either way, they eliminated the problem I represented. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was helpless, that I had no agency in my own fate. They were about to learn otherwise. The next morning, Dr. Martinez returned alone for his rounds. As soon as he entered the room, I could sense his tension. "I know you're awake," he said quietly, checking to make sure the door was closed. "And I know what your family is planning. We need to talk." I opened my eyes slowly, blinking in the fluorescent light that suddenly seemed too bright. "How long have you known?" I whispered, my voice hoarse from days of silence. "Since yesterday. Your heart rate spikes every time they say something disturbing. Your brain scans show normal activity patterns. You're physically capable of consciousness." I struggled to sit up, my body stiff and weak from days of lying motionless. "They're trying to kill me," I said. The words felt surreal even as I spoke them. "I know. And legally, they might be able to do it. They filed paperwork establishing medical power of attorney." "How's that possible?" "I never gave them that authority. They claimed you were incapacitated and had no advance directives. Without anyone to contest it, the court granted their emergency petition. But I'm conscious now." "Yes, but they could argue that your brain injury has affected your judgment. With the right psychiatric evaluation and family testimony, they could have you declared incompetent." "So, what are my options?" Dr. Martinez pulled a chair close to my bed, his expression grave. "Limited, but not non-existent. Tell me about this uncle." They mentioned the one in prison. So, I told him everything. About Uncle Richard moving in with us when I was 7, after his messy divorce left him temporarily homeless. About how my parents welcomed him with open arms, grateful for the help with childcare while they worked long hours building their careers. About how his help quickly turned into something much darker. "It started as games," I said, the words feeling like broken glass in my throat. "Special games that were our secret." He said I was mature for my age, that I could handle grown-up activities other kids couldn't. Dr. Martinez listened without judgment, occasionally taking notes. By the time I was 10, the games had escalated. He convinced me it was normal, that all uncles did this with their nieces. When I got uncomfortable, he'd remind me how much my parents depended on him, how devastated they'd be if I caused problems. "Did you ever try to tell anyone?" "Once. When I was 12, I tried to tell my mom. She was getting ready for work, rushing around the kitchen, and I said that Uncle Richard made me uncomfortable." "What did she say?" She said I was being dramatic, that Uncle Richard was family, that he loved me and would never hurt me. She said I should be grateful to have such a caring uncle. Dr. Martinez shook his head in disgust. The abuse continued until I left for college at 18. Even then, he'd find ways to corner me during holiday visits. It wasn't until I was 22 and in therapy that I understood what had really happened to me. What made you finally report it? My cousin Isla. She was 7, the same age I was when it started. I noticed him paying her the same kind of special attention. I couldn't let it happen to another child. So, you went to the police? First, I tried to warn my family. I thought if I explained what he'd done to me, they'd protect Isla. But they accused me of being jealous, vindictive, attention-seeking. They said I was making up stories to hurt Uncle Richard because I'd always resented his success. That must have been devastating. It was. But I couldn't let Isla suffer what I'd suffered. So, I went to the police alone. And they believed you? Eventually. The detective was experienced with sexual abuse cases. She knew what to look for, what questions to ask. When they examined Isla, they found evidence that confirmed my worst fears. He was already abusing her. Yes, for months. And there were others. Girls from his neighborhood, his ex-wife's daughter from her first marriage. The investigation uncovered a pattern going back 20 years. Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Your family still doesn't believe you. They believe what's convenient. Admitting he's guilty would mean admitting they failed to protect me. It's easier to believe I'm lying. What do you want to do now? I want to disappear. I want them to think I died. That's complicated and illegal. More illegal than conspiracy to commit murder? Point taken. But faking a death involves falsifying medical records, insurance fraud, potential federal charges. What if we don't fake it? What if we just let them make their choice? Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. I don't follow. They want to withdraw life support, right? What if we give them the opportunity? What if I have a medical emergency that requires life support and then they make the decision to let me die? You're not on life support. But I could be temporarily. A complication that requires intubation. Then when they choose to let me die, we document everything. That's incredibly risky. Less risky than letting them actually kill me. Dr. Martinez studied my chart, thinking hard. There might be another way, he said slowly. But it would require perfect timing, absolute trust, and significant risk for both of us. What kind of way? Medical records can be interpreted creatively. If you were to have a sudden decline, require emergency intervention, and then pass away despite our best efforts, well, death certificates are filed based on medical judgment. You did have a brain injury. You'd fake my death. I'd document a tragic outcome following complications from traumatic brain injury, which technically wouldn't be entirely false. And then you'd need a new identity, a new life, and the ability to stay hidden indefinitely. The plan seemed impossible, too complex, too dangerous. But the alternative was letting my family either kill me or control me for the rest of my life. Let's do it, I said. Are you sure? Once you're legally dead, there's no going back. You'd lose everything. Your career, your friends, your entire identity. I've already lost my family. Everything else can be replaced. What about your job, your colleagues? They'll remember me as someone who died too young. That's better than living as someone who was never really alive. Dr. Martinez spent the next hour outlining the details. He'd document a sudden deterioration in my condition, requiring emergency life support. My family would be called in to make the decision about continuing care. When they chose to let me die, he'd document my passing and arrange for my body to be transferred to a specific funeral home with connections to witness protection services. This will end my career if we're caught, he warned. The medical board would revoke my license. I could face criminal charges. Why are you willing to risk it? Because I've seen what families like yours do to survivors. Because I took an oath to do no harm, and letting them kill you would violate that oath. And because sometimes the system fails people who deserve better. What do you need from me? Complete trust. When the time comes, you'll need to stop breathing on your own. You'll need to let the machines show cardiac arrest while staying conscious enough to hear what they say. How long will I need to hold my breath? Not long, maybe 30 seconds, but it has to be convincing. What if something goes wrong? Then we improvise, but I'll be monitoring everything. I won't let anything happen to you. 2 days later, Dr. Martinez called my family with urgent news. I'd taken a sudden turn for the worse. Brain swelling had increased dramatically, requiring emergency intubation to protect my airway. They needed to come immediately. When they arrived, I was connected to a ventilator, heavily sedated according to my chart, but actually fully conscious. Dr. Martinez had coached me extensively on the procedure, how to stay perfectly still, how to let the machine breathe for me, how to remain unresponsive to stimulation. What happened? Mom asked, and I could hear the carefully controlled excitement in her voice. The brain swelling increased suddenly overnight, Dr. Martinez explained gravely. We had to intubate to protect her airway. She's in a medically induced coma now. What's the prognosis? Camden asked, trying to sound concerned, but failing to hide his anticipation. Guarded. The increased pressure has affected vital brain structures. Even if we can reduce the swelling, there may be permanent damage. What kind of damage? Mom pressed. Cognitive impairment, personality changes, loss of motor function. She might never be the same person she was. I could practically hear their relief. What are our options? Camden asked. We can continue aggressive treatment and hope the swelling responds to medication. Or, Dr. Martinez paused dramatically. Or what? Mom prompted eagerly. Given her prognosis and the likelihood of severe impairment, some families choose to withdraw life support and allow natural death to occur. Is that what you'd recommend? Camden asked. I can't make that decision for you. I can only provide information about her likely outcomes and respect whatever choice you make as her family. They asked to speak privately. Through my closed eyelids, I could sense them huddling together near the window, whispering urgent consultations about my fate. Doctor, Mom said finally, returning to my bedside. We've made our decision. And that is, we want to withdraw life support. It's what she would want. She always said she wouldn't want to live if she couldn't be independent. I'd never said any such thing, but I wasn't surprised they'd invent a conversation that justified their choice. She wouldn't want to be a burden, Camden added. This is the merciful thing to do. Merciful? Murdering me was merciful. Are you certain? Dr. Martinez asked. This decision is irreversible. We're certain, Camden said firmly. When can we proceed? I'll need to complete some paperwork, notify the ethics committee, and allow time for any family members who want to say goodbye. Tomorrow morning, we can begin the process. That night, Dr. Martinez came to check on me after the evening shift change. Are you ready for this? He whispered, checking to make sure no one was in the hallway. I squeezed his hand, the first voluntary movement I'd made in days. Tomorrow, when they withdraw the ventilator, you'll need to stop breathing on your own for about 30 seconds. I'll document cardiac arrest, then begin resuscitation efforts that will fail. From there, you'll be transferred to the morgue and then to our contact at the funeral home. What about my records here? They'll show that you died from complications following withdrawal of life support. Cause of death will be listed as natural. Brain death following traumatic injury. And if they want an autopsy, they won't. Your family has already indicated they want immediate cremation with minimal ceremony. Of course they did. The faster I disappeared, the sooner they could collect the insurance money and move on with their lives. One more thing, Dr. Martinez said. I've contacted someone who specializes in helping abuse survivors disappear. She'll be waiting at the funeral home to begin the process of creating your new identity. What's her name? Agent Patricia Wolf, FBI. She's been tracking your uncle's case and knows about your family's reaction to your testimony. The FBI was involved. This was bigger than just my family's greed. It was part of a larger investigation into how abuse survivors were silenced by their family. The next morning, my entire extended family gathered for my death. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly appeared to witness my final moments. They arranged themselves around my bed like mourners at a wake, their faces carefully composed in expressions of grief that didn't reach their eyes. Dr. Martinez explained the procedure with professional gravity. When life support was withdrawn, my body would either resume natural breathing or cardiovascular function would cease. There was no way to predict which would happen. Before we begin, Mom announced, we'd like to say our goodbyes. One by one, they approached my bed with their hollow words of farewell. We love you. Rest in peace. You'll finally have the peace you've been seeking. Uncle Paul leaned close and whispered, so only I could hear. Maybe now Richard can finally forgive you. Aunt Dolores squeezed my hand and said, we know you're sorry for what you did to our family. My father kissed my forehead and murmured, I hope you find whatever you were looking for. Camden was last. He gripped my hand and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, we're sorry it had to end this way, but we know this is what you'd want, to be free from the pain you've been carrying. What I'd want. They were killing me for my own good. Are you ready to proceed? Dr. Martinez asked. We're ready, Mom said without hesitation. Dr. Martinez began the process of withdrawing life support. First, he discontinued the 4 medications that were supposedly keeping me sedated. Then he removed the feeding tube. Finally, he began preparing to extubate me. Once I remove the breathing tube, we'll know quickly whether she can breathe on her own, he explained. And if she can't? Camden asked. Then we'll make her as comfortable as possible while nature takes its course. The breathing tube was removed. This was my moment. I forced myself to remain completely still, to not draw a single breath, despite every instinct screaming at me to inhale. She's not breathing on her own, Dr. Martinez announced, watching the monitors that were showing the predetermined patterns we'd arranged around me. I heard the subtle sounds of relief disguised as grief. Quiet sighs, shuffling feet, whispered conversations about how peaceful I looked. Her heart is dropping. Dr. Martinez playing his role perfectly. Is she in pain? Mom asked, though her voice held no real concern. No, she's completely unconscious. This is peaceful. How long will it take? Camden asked. Not long now. Her heart rate is becoming irregular. I lay there, holding my breath, counting seconds in my head. 30 seconds felt like 30 years, but I forced myself to remain motionless. I'm losing cardiac rhythm, Dr. Martinez said. I'm going to call it. He went through the official procedure, noting the time of death, documenting the cause, and explaining next steps to my family. We'd like to arrange cremation as quickly as possible, Camden said immediately. She wouldn't want a big funeral. She was always private about these things. Private? They wanted me cremated quickly, so there'd be no chance of discovery. I understand, Dr. Martinez said. I'll have her body transferred to Morrison Funeral Home. They can handle all the arrangements discreetly. Morrison Funeral Home, the facility Dr. Martinez had arranged to facilitate my disappearance. For the next hour, I lay perfectly still while my family discussed funeral logistics around my corpse. They planned a small memorial service, chose the cheapest cremation package, and drafted a brief obituary that focused more on their grief than my life. The life insurance company will need a death certificate, Camden mentioned to Dr. Martinez. I'll have that filed within 24 hours, he replied professionally. When they finally left to begin making arrangements, Dr. Martinez waited another hour before approaching my bed. They're gone, he whispered. You can breathe now. I gasped, filling my lungs with air that tasted like freedom and terror in equal measure. How do you feel? Like a ghost, I said, my voice thin from the effort of staying silent. How does this work now? In about an hour, the funeral home will send a hearse. You'll be transferred in a body bag to their facility where you'll meet Agent Wolf and begin the process of becoming someone new. What about you? Won't they investigate when they realize the death certificate was falsified? The beauty of this plan is that technically I never falsified anything. You did stop breathing, your heart did stop, and you were pronounced dead based on the observable evidence. If questions arise later, I'll say there was a communication error about the timing of your recovery. That seems like a thin defense. It's better than the alternative. And Agent Wolf assures me that your family's actions are already under federal investigation. Once that becomes public, any questions about your death will be overshadowed by the criminal charges they'll be facing. They're really going to be arrested? Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, abuse of medical power of attorney. The FBI has been building a case since they filed that insurance claim before you were even declared dead. An hour later, I was wheeled out of the hospital in a body bag, loaded into a hearse, and transported to Morrison Funeral Home. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being born again in a place designed for endings. At the funeral home, I was transferred to a secure room where I met Agent Patricia Wolf. She was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes and a firm handshake that immediately put me at ease. Dr. Martinez contacted us about your situation, she explained. We've been investigating your family's activities since they filed the insurance claim. They filed it before I was actually dead? Camden submitted the paperwork and supporting documentation the same day they made the decision to withdraw life support. That's insurance fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. What happens now? Now we build a case while keeping you safe. Your family believes you're dead, which gives us time to gather evidence and prepare for prosecution. Agent Wolf explained that I'd be placed in a form of federal witness protection while they completed their investigation. I'd receive a new identity complete with social security number, birth certificate, and medical records that documented my recovery from a different accident in a different state. What about my life here, my job, my friends? They'll mourn your loss and remember you fondly. It's not ideal, but it's safer than the alternative. For the next 6 months, I lived in a safe house in Colorado, working with federal prosecutors to build the case against my family. I testified before grand juries, provided detailed accounts of their conversations and plans, and helped establish the timeline of their conspiracy. The FBI had also been recording their phone calls and monitoring their financial activities. Camden had been researching the insurance claim process weeks before my accident. Mom had been consulting with financial advisors about investing a large sum of money. They'd even met with travel agents about that European vacation they'd mentioned. They'd been planning to profit from my death before I was even injured. The case attracted national media attention when the arrests were made. Headlines screamed, "Family plots daughter's death for insurance money, abuse survivor outsmarts murderous relatives, the woman who had to die to live." Camden was sentenced to 18 years for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. Mom received 15 years. The other family members who participated received sentences ranging from 5 to 10 years, depending on their level of involvement. Uncle Richard's parole was denied again, with my case cited as evidence of his continued danger to family members and the ongoing impact of his crimes. Dr. Martinez faced a medical board investigation, but was ultimately cleared of all charges. The board ruled that his actions were justified given the credible threat to patient safety, and he was commended for his courage in protecting a vulnerable patient. 2 years after my death, I testified at Uncle Richard's third parole hearing via secure video link. The parole board was shown evidence of my family's conspiracy and my continued need for federal protection. His parole was denied for another 5 years. I now live under the legal identity of Sage Miller in Oregon, working as a paramedic in a rural county where my skills are desperately needed. I've completed additional training under my new identity and earned certifications that allow me to serve as a flight medic for the region's helicopter rescue service. My new colleagues know me as someone who transferred from Colorado after a difficult divorce. They don't know about my past, but they know me as someone who fights fiercely for patients, especially those who are vulnerable or voiceless. The work is demanding but fulfilling. Every life I save feels like proof that I made the right choice, that surviving was worth the cost of everything I left behind. Sometimes I get letters forwarded through the FBI from distant relatives who claim they always suspected something was wrong and want to reconnect now that the truth has come out. Some offer apologies for their role in ostracizing me. Others claim they were manipulated by the family members who are now in prison. I read these letters carefully, then file them away unanswered. Because the most important lesson I learned during those days in that hospital bed is that family isn't defined by blood or genetics. It's defined by the people who show up when you need them, who believe you when you tell difficult truths, and who protect you even when it costs them something precious. Dr. Martinez still checks in through secure channels, updating me on his continued work with abuse survivors and the protocols he's developed for identifying families who pose threats to vulnerable patients. Agent Wolf has become a genuine friend, someone who understands the complexity of survivor guilt and the ongoing challenge of building a new identity while processing old trauma. My new EMT partner, Quinn, doesn't know about my past, but has become the kind of friend I never had growing up, someone who values honesty, courage, and genuine kindness over social status or family reputation. Last year, I helped save a teenage girl who'd been sexually abused by her stepfather. When her family tried to pressure her to recant her statement, tried to convince her to keep it in the family to avoid scandal, I made sure she had advocates who believed her. I made sure she had what I'd never had, adults who prioritized her safety over their own comfort. The hardest part of my new life isn't the isolation or the false identity or even the knowledge that I can never return to who I used to be. It's accepting that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were willing to kill me for money and convenience. But from that devastating truth came an unexpected gift, the absolute certainty that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. Strong enough to fake my own death, outsmart people who thought I was helpless, and rebuild my entire existence from nothing. Strong enough to save others. Every emergency call I respond to, every patient I help stabilize, every family I comfort in their worst moments is proof that sometimes the best revenge against people who tried to destroy you is simply refusing to stay destroyed. My family thought they were eliminating a problem. Instead, they created someone truly unstoppable. Someone who learned that the most powerful thing you can do when people want you gone is to choose exactly how you disappear and exactly when you return. Even if returning means becoming someone entirely new. The woman they tried to kill is gone forever. But the woman who took her place is everything they never expected. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Someone who discovered that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. And sometimes the person you really are is someone worth dying for. Someone worth living for. Someone worth becoming.